shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's edition of Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. I'm thrilled to bring you a special session today with Dr. Jennie Freiman. She's a gynecologist, health writer, and the product developer and founder of Ubro Incorporated, a wellness company. Ubro Ideal Turmeric was launched in November 2016 and has more products to come down her pipeline. But we are thrilled to introduce this first discussion around turmeric and discuss the wellness impact, who should use turmeric, why this is an important supplement for many people, where the research is going with this, and what the future could hold. So welcome, Dr. Jennie.
Thanks for having me. I'm actually thrilled to be here.
Wonderful. So let's start by letting our audience get to know you a little bit. Could you share with us your story, how you got to be an expert in this particular area?
Sure. So I actually had a very traditional training in medicine. I went to medical school as well as college in New York City. That's where I'm from. And I practiced gynecology in Manhattan for my entire career. And so I would say that I approached health and wellness from a very traditional background. I was a good student and I learned well. And it really was only through many, many years of practice, and I had a very close relationship with the people I took care of because gynecology is a primary care specialty. So aside from being the gynecologist, I was the confidant, the medical doctor, just, it's the kind of relationship that develops through time. And through time, I grew to be somewhat disillusioned with what we could offer in traditional healthcare. And that seems to be that a problem shows up and we pretty much throw either medicine or surgery at that problem. And in the field of gynecology, we do both. We take care of problems with medication, but we're also surgeons. So we seem to have that pretty standard approach to things. And the problem is that that approach to things seems to create more need for the kind of healthcare we offer. So somebody might be treated with an antibiotic for a specific infection, and then that female would end up with a yeast infection, which was treated with a different product, and then that would lead to vaginal dryness, which is treated with a different product. And it just got to me after many years of practice that I didn't really think people were improving their condition as much as they were just dealing with it. So that was one thing. I think it was experience showed me kind of that there has to be a different way. The other thing that came together with my great interest in wellness is that my mom developed Alzheimer's disease at a relatively young age. She was actually in her late 60s, which for me was really quite young for that kind of problem. She's the first person in our family to have gotten it, so it kind of came out of the blue. And she had very traditional care, which is all I knew about at the time. So all the doctors taking care of her, who I had referred her to, were very traditional. And basically, she really wasn't helped. She was maintained in her downhill course. So that affected me greatly, and I am very much like her. She had Hashimoto's thyroiditis. I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. There are many, many things about her that I am just like. So naturally, I'm very worried about the notion that I might develop Alzheimer's disease. And more importantly than that, I don't want it to happen to my children. So my interest in wellness really was motivated by that. I was looking for strategies to maintain wellness and particularly brain wellness. And when I quit working, which I did when my daughter, who is my youngest, went off to college, I completely devoted myself to wellness education, self-education, listening, reading, listening to Beyond Your Wildest Genes. I'm a subscriber. And I've learned a lot, and I've kind of really made that my complete focus in this second phase of my life.
Well, that's quite an amazing journey. And I think, a number of guests that we've talked to in varying fields of medicine and healthcare, have had a similar experience where there's absolutely wonderful things that we can do in traditional mainstream medicine, but there's a place where we get to where are we getting at the cause, and where are we addressing things more upstream than managing those symptoms and then continuing to manage the symptoms as they progress. So having someone with your background then enter this wellness and preventative management space really brings the best of both worlds to looking at these products and looking at what we can do for our health ourselves. So,
exactly. And I do feel that my traditional training, while I don't always speak of it with the highest regard, because I do think that traditional training is somewhat limited, I do feel that it's allowed me to critically assess when I read an article that's been published that just comes out in the literature. I feel I have a little bit of the ability, or maybe a lot of the ability, to more critically assess what I'm reading, which I actually think is a challenge for people who are not medically trained. I see this with my kids. Both of my kids are pretty attuned to the need for wellness, but they'll read something and not really know what part of this might be real, what part of it might not be. So I'm hoping to share as much of that expertise that I have as I can.
Well, and I think that is important. That's one of the reasons why my partners and I started this podcast, is the absolute amazing volume of material and information that's out there is unprecedented in history. We can access with Dr. Google all kinds of amazing bits of information, but without someone there to kind of scan that and bring the really relevant and more well-researched, more proven pieces together, it can be overwhelming, and it can lead people down to some scary rabbit holes too.
And actually, what I specifically like about what you and your group are doing is that you are focused on genes and silencing and expressing genes. And really, when we focus on epigenetics and go beyond our wildest genes, what we're really saying is, yes, we received a genetic legacy, but that genetic legacy is not going to determine our outcome exclusively. And we have a lot of power in either helping our genes do their good things and stopping our genes from doing their bad things. And that's the kind of information that you, to this date, will not and cannot get from traditional healthcare. And you really do have to look to alternative sources so far overall to be able to help you figure out what actually can I do with my behavior, my environment, my diet, to make a difference in my outcome.
Exactly. And I kind of came into this conversation, my background is as a chiropractor. So obviously we have a lot of wellness focus in the practice that I have, but we do see a lot of people with pain and degenerative conditions that we're always looking for things that they can also do to build their health and to deal with that pain without the side effects of a number of medications that are out there and maybe sort of the traditional route. And turmeric is something that has cropped up quite consistently over the last number of years as an anti-inflammatory and as a treatment with arthritis. And then in looking for things, as my mother-in-law was recently diagnosed with an Alzheimer's version as well, looking at that brain health and seeing the link between inflammatory gut diseases and a number of brain degenerative conditions. So I was thrilled to see your information and be able to have a little more detailed and scientific discussion about what turmeric really is and how that actually works in the body. So that's your specific area of expertise with this product through Ubro. So what does the turmeric actually do in layman's terms?
Yes. So the amazing thing about turmeric is that it has both thousands of years of experience in traditional populations that incorporated it into their diets, and at the same time, it has thousands and thousands of scientific studies at every level, from cellular studies to animal studies to human studies. So it's one of the most both experience-based and science-based foods that is out there. And so as a wellness individual, and also as an individual strongly seeking to protect my brain health, it was very clear to me early on in my journey that I needed to get some turmeric into my diet. And I will say that although I have a supplement and a company that does wellness products, not only supplements, I want to be very clear that if it's at all possible, I absolutely believe that dietary turmeric is the best thing you can do, even better than my supplement. Although if you can't do dietary turmeric, then I think my supplement is the best choice, and I'll get into why. But basically what we know from experience and science is that turmeric is anti-inflammatory, and it has a number of other epigenetic benefits, of which inflammation is just one of them. But specifically because you're a chiropractor, and by the way, chiropractors were always into health and wellness ahead of the MD group of people. So I give you all a lot of credit for that. But specifically, they have run some studies where they ran turmeric against nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which are the standard, I believe, first-line treatment. If someone's having arthritic pain, they're told to take aspirin or Advil or those kind of drugs. And so they actually ran turmeric against nonsteroidals, and they did it on groups of people. One group had knee arthritis and knee pain. There were some other arthritic conditions in which they studied this. And they found clearly that turmeric was equal in its effectiveness for treating the pain of arthritis, and also in its ability to help people start walking again comfortably. The difference was that it didn't have any of the adverse side effects of nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So, for example, nonsteroidals have now been linked to heart disease, stroke, all kinds of ailments. We were always told they were incredibly safe. They are now black boxed if they are by prescription. Black box meaning that's the highest FDA level of warning about potential adverse effects to your health. And in the over-the-counters, they're not black box, but there's strong language in there that says that these drugs should not be used for long lengths of time unless utterly necessary. And now that we know turmeric is just as good without any of those side effects, I think that offers a wonderful option for arthritis and arthritic pain to the type of patients that you take care of, for example.
Absolutely.
We have a little joke in my family. In the olden days, I don't know if all of your listeners will remember this, but in the olden days, there was sort of a joke in the days when doctors didn't have much in their toolbox to help people. The joke was you would call the doctor, and the doctor would say, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning, because, pretty much if it wasn't serious, it was going to go away overnight. And if it was serious, you needed to speak to the doctor the next day. And in our family, we say, take 2 turmeric and call me in the morning.
Absolutely. That certainly sounds like a much better option. So you mentioned that getting turmeric through diet is really your preferred suggestion for people. So how do people do that in the real world? Where do they find turmeric, and how do they incorporate that into their menu?
So, well, it's fairly easy to find now that we live in an online world, because as you probably know, turmeric is not, it's grown in Eastern Asian countries. It needs a certain kind of tropical environment to grow naturally. It's not the kind of thing that we would naturally be growing in the US or Canada. But in the internet world that we're in, it's very, very easy to get online. And I would strongly only recommend organic turmeric, and that would be because non-organics are raised with sewer sludge and can be irradiated. So there are some pretty serious negatives about eating non-organic produce. I can give a plug to a company I have nothing to do with. We always keep turmeric in our home as a backup. In my house, we all take my product, but we have the turmeric as a backup, and we use the Star West Botanicals, and it's an excellent organic ground turmeric product that can be ordered online. So it turns out that in the native populations that eat turmeric and experience turmeric's benefits, somehow they figured out that turmeric is not well absorbed unless it's eaten in combination with a healthy oil and actually with pepper as well. So if a person is going to cook with turmeric, it's important to cook in a healthy oil. I'd recommend coconut oil, organic of course, and to cook that food with pepper. So in my own case, being a very highly motivated person and wanting very much to be able to do that, what I found realistically, and I believe this is true for many Westerners, is that I simply just don't like turmeric enough to eat it regularly. And also, this is a bit of a silly thing, but it actually stains everything in sight. So I'm just running all over my kitchen trying to not get yellow stains. So that's a little silly. I guess that's a first world problem. But, for those who can incorporate it, and the recommended amount scientifically is somewhere between 1 to 3 grams a day. And that is in line exactly with what traditional East Asian populations were eating. They traditionally were eating about 1.5 grams a day. That's actually not that easy for most of us to do, but if anyone can do it, I have to say that I consider that to be the best way to get your turmeric, because food has synergies that occur. When foods are working together, we get all kinds of synergies that we just don't get when we pull something out of its natural habitat. So I think that's your first best choice if you can do it.
Perfect. And we did talk about the arthritic and anti-inflammatory and pain-relieving properties of turmeric, but that's not what brought you to that conversation. It was more the brain health and the protection and the prevention aspect in terms of Alzheimer's after your mother's experience. So how does the turmeric work in that avenue?
So it actually works in multiple different ways to protect brain health. And it turns out that Alzheimer's disease is a very complex illness that actually has many different things feeding into it. And in point of fact, one of the reasons that no treatment we have so far actually works for it is that conventional treatment is always aimed at one thing. It doesn't really see the bigger holistic integrated picture. So, for example, with brain health, there is neuroinflammation, inflammation of the cells in the brain. There's a defect in the blood-brain barrier, which actually allows toxins to enter the brain. There's a defect in the homeostasis around metal metabolism in your brain, so heavy metals are involved. The list goes on and on. I'm actually writing a book about this now that I hope some point down the line will be out there. The entire focus of the book is on strategies to help prevent Alzheimer's disease, and there are actually a lot of them. But in the case of turmeric, when I did my original research a while ago, there were 2 things I found that were very clear that were critical for brain health, and one was turmeric and the other is coconut oil. So those are the things I kind of got to first, and as I said, now I'm working on really creating a program for people that would like to maintain their brain health, improve it, and hopefully prevent dementia. So it turns out for your brain that in many different ways, turmeric is an epigenetic agent. It actually fixes many of those things that I just mentioned and is involved in the pathology, which involves all of those things that I just mentioned.
Wow. So that is that's going to be another chance to bring you back on the program and have a chat when that book is done, because that will be a fascinating opportunity for people to learn about dementia and create some upstream solutions and preventative strategies around that. It is becoming an epidemic for sure.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And actually, I want to tell you about a wonderful and also very fun experiment that was done. Specifically, they were looking at whether turmeric can boost health. And it was done, there's a program on the BBC, so in England, and it's called Trust Me, I'm a Doctor. And the moderator of the program, who is a kind of a TV personality, works with a group of doctors, and they pick topics and then they investigate them. So I was utterly thrilled that back in September of 2016, they did this program on can turmeric boost health. And what they did was they took 100 volunteers, they divided them into three, so roughly about 33 people or so in each group. They had one group eat 1 teaspoon of turmeric every day. They had one group take a placebo, so it was basically nothing. I don't know if it was sugar, but it was basically nothing in there. And then they had one group take the turmeric that they were giving the other group as 1 teaspoon in the diet. They gave it to them in the capsule. And at the baseline, they actually took blood on all of these people. And one of the doctors in London who runs an epigenetics lab did a study of the DNA methylation, which is one of the things that's involved in epigenetics. He did that as baseline, and then 6 weeks later, when this study was done, he drew the same people's blood again to see if there was actually a difference. And in a matter of 6 weeks, they found that there was a difference in DNA methylation, interestingly, only in their diet group. They, of course, we didn't expect them to find any change in their placebo group. It was pretty surprising that they didn't find it in their supplement group. And I actually wrote to them and I said, I bet the reason you didn't see this in your supplement group is people probably just down their supplements with a glass of water, because that's what people usually do. And so they would have missed the benefit of the supplement. Doesn't mean the supplement didn't work. It means that how they were taking the supplement didn't work. But anyway, they, I think, had already gotten their point out. They were happy that, a teaspoon of turmeric made an epigenetic difference. And it was just a wonderful, quick study and very accessible. It was on TV. It really brought turmeric to people's attention.
Well, and I think that brings up another really encouraging point for listeners, is that the things you do really do have an immediate impact. And often, in talking with patients and clients about their health, they get a little bit depressed or dejected maybe that, they've done all these things that perhaps weren't the healthiest choices that they could have made, or have gotten themselves into a pickle in some way, shape, or form, and they feel a little bit hopeless. But it's really never too late to turn that epigenetic bus around and head in a different direction.
That is absolutely true. And the studies at every level indicate that the what you do actually gets reflected really quickly in your epigenetics. Now, again, in the case of, for example, Alzheimer's, if you have already lost those brain cells, you are not going to get them back. And that's why it's critically important for people that are interested to start working on their brain health as young as they possibly can. It actually turns out that seeds of Alzheimer's are placed at very young ages. Many people think you hit middle age and that's when it starts. It's actually not true. It starts when you're very young. Part of the reason I have my kids on their programs, their genes most likely have an excellent chance of having inherited something from my mom that might not be wonderful. And so I'm having them, and they're 20 and 23. They're working on this right now because this is actually when it starts. And this is the time before there are problems to turn that bus around. The other thing that I want to mention to your listeners is that, you know, wellness is an investment and it's a commitment. And you don't, you know, if you are treating a problem, for example, if you're treating arthritis, after a certain number of weeks of doing whatever you're doing, whether it's turmeric or a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, you are going to see a response. And that's something that you can kind of lean on, and you know what you're doing is helping you. What really, really is hard is when you make that commitment to wellness, you are making that commitment because you believe that what you do makes a difference, but you might not see that immediately, or you'll see it in ways that might not register, such as, I don't take flu vaccines, but I don't get the flu. I think that has to do with what I'm doing, although I can't prove it. So I think for those that are interested and committed to wellness, you simply have to believe that what you're doing makes a difference for you. And we've proven it in the laboratory and with certain studies, but you might not actually know it in yourself.
That's a really good point. It's a very difficult thing to measure prevention, you know, to look at a patient and say, well, if you hadn't taken that or done that or acted like that, you would have ended up in a different place. It's sometimes difficult for them to see what dangers they avoided by doing that. Yeah. So with turmeric, obviously there's a tremendous amount of health benefits. Is there anyone who should not take it or should not use it? Are there allergies? Are there side effects?
So it's actually funny because someone using my product actually emailed me the other day to ask me about her husband taking it because he's on Plavix, which is a blood thinner. And so here's what we know about turmeric. In the diet, I am not aware of there being any adverse interaction, although you will read that, for example, if you're on blood thinners, that turmeric can make your blood even thinner than it already is, which can lead to excess bleeding. So I would say that for a person who is on blood thinners, I would not recommend taking any supplement. The real reason, any turmeric supplement, the real reason for that is the studies simply have not been done, and therefore you always have to err on the side of caution. In terms of having some turmeric in the diet, I don't believe that would be problematic. So aside from the blood thinning, there are studies with as much as 8,000 grams of turmeric taken per day. That is really a lot, and no adverse side effects found. In my product, for example, if you take 3 a day, you're taking a little under 2,000, but which is within the medically recommended wellness space. But it has been taken under scientific study in as high as 8,000. 8,000 milligrams, which is 8 grams. My mistake there. So I would say that it's a very, very safe thing to do, absent having a blood thinning issue.
Okay, well let's spend a few minutes now talking about your particular supplement and why you developed your own supplement. Obviously, there's other products out there, and you felt strongly that you could build something better. So, what is it about Ubro and your product that is different and more special?
So I am an obsessive label reader, and I do that with the food that I take and any supplement that I'm willing to take. So I first recognized that I was not going to be able to get enough turmeric in my diet, and therefore I had to turn to supplements. So I did a very, very exhaustive kind of overview of what was out there, and which is how I came to realize that I wasn't going to take anything that was out there. So one of the very, very common issues, and this actually represents the bulk of what's available in turmeric supplements, is that the supplements are not actually turmeric. They're actually curcumin. And curcumin is one of the bioactive components of whole turmeric, but it's not the only one. And there are many studies that indicate the other parts of turmeric. So curcumin is part of a group of compounds which are curcuminoids, and whole turmeric also includes other compound categories. One of them are turmerones, which are oils, and the other one are polysaccharides, which are a complex sugar. So in whole turmeric, you're getting all of those, and it represents hundreds and hundreds of bioactive compounds, and you're getting them together in a synergy. When curcumin gets pulled out, you're giving up all those other benefits, which have been shown scientifically. And in addition to that, by pulling it out, they're having to process it. And processed supplements are really no different than processed foods. They're being subjected to chemicals, heating, various different methods of actually being able to separate the curcumin. And then finally, regarding the curcumin, what they've also done with it in most of the supplements is they've super concentrated it under, the idea that if some is good, more is better. And that is definitely not the case, that if some is good, more is better. There's generally always a sweet spot with everything. So for example, even in the drug world, if you take 2 Tylenol, that's really going to help your headache. But if you take 200, you're going to die of liver failure. So, we just, in nature, there are sweet spots for what we should be doing. So those were some of the very big problems. I realized immediately I would only take a whole food supplement. I was not going to take an extracted or curcumin only supplement or super concentrated. So that actually limited the playing field a lot. And then the other thing was, because I'm an obsessive label reader, I wanted my label to be clean. I didn't want to take a product that I was taking for my health, but then they were stuffing it with all kinds of inactive ingredients that are not good for your health. Those they're called other ingredients on the label. And you'll find chemicals and things that are put in there because it actually makes the production of the supplement cheaper and faster, and it fills up the supplement and it gives it a certain consistency they want to have, but none of these things benefit your health in any way. So those were the big things. And I also wanted my supplement to be organic, anything that I was going to take. For the reasons I stated earlier, non-organics in the produce range, which actually turmeric is produce, it's a vegetable, they're basically raised with fertilizer that's made from sewage, and they're irradiated. So same thing. Why would I be taking, a product for my health when it's been subject to processes that I just would not be willing to be involved in? And then I could go on and on. There were so many different things that bothered me about what was out there. But there are 2 other quick things I want to mention. Virtually all supplements are bottled in plastic, which makes absolutely no sense at all because we know that plastic leaches hormone disruptors into the things it contains. So I wanted my product to be in glass, and that is very difficult to find. And then finally, I wanted to make sure that what I put into my system was going to have been really strictly controlled. I wanted it to have been heavy metal tested because we know that turmeric can be contaminated by heavy metals. Almost all of the products didn't bother to mention that they were testing for heavy metals, which says to me that they weren't. So long story short, I kind of created a list for myself of everything that a supplement should have, and I couldn't find it. And that's really what motivated me to make my own. And I absolutely never had any intention of creating a supplement. And my company is actually a wellness company. It's not just going to produce supplements, but it turns out that the first product was a supplement because that's what I needed to take. And anyone who's interested in more of this, on my website, I have it listed as the top 10 reasons to take this product, and it kind of goes through everything I mentioned in more detail.
And for people listening, that it'll be in the show notes. So if you happen to be in your car or inaccessible to pen and paper, don't worry about it. It will be in the little notes by the download. But it's oobro.com. So that's OOBROO.com. So that would be the website to look for all of that extra information.
And I want to also mention that if anyone's interested in just some wellness tips, not necessarily related to turmeric, but just wellness in general, they can just sign up on my website for getting, information that my latest blog has come out, or information about other sites that I write for if they want to read those articles. And there's no obligation at all to purchase any product or future products. And we don't share people's emails and information with anyone else.
Perfect. Well, I think we're just about out of time. So is there anything specific that you would like to leave with us to think about, Dr. Jennie?
Just that wellness is worth it, and make some time in your day every day to think about what you can do to achieve that goal. Every little step makes a difference.
That is brilliant advice. So thank you so much for joining us. Today we've had a great conversation with Dr. Jennie Freiman of Oobro Incorporated. And I hope you'll take a moment to check out her website, OOBROO.com. And we look forward to talking to you again next week on Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.